Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening.
Give me a moment, would you, friend? I've never been on trial for my thoughts before.
Welcome to the Only One Mic podcast. I'm your host, Carl Gerard, and I have the pleasure of being joined today by author and educator Waka T. Brown. How are you doing, Miss Brown?
I'm doing great, Carl. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Waka. Okay, so Waka, before we start, full disclosure to everybody, we actually was supposed to do this last week, and I had some technical difficulties on my end. And Waka has been a gracious guest and agreed to come back on. So I really appreciate you for that. I just wanted to start off with that, Waka, just to say thank you.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, I don't mind at all because it allows me to fix my mistakes and wherever I felt like I didn't sound great. So no problem.
No, I don't. Listen, I want everybody to know it was not Waka. I don't want you to think that the interview was just bad. It was just technical difficulties on my side. So Waka was a very, very gracious guest, and it was just a slip up on my end. So we got it all fixed, and now we're ready to rock. I just wanted to start off with that. So Waka, like I mentioned, author, educator, you know, you have your new book out, While I Was Away, which is a memoir on your experience as a kid from Topeka, Kansas, who was sent to Japan to live with her grandmother. All right. So listen, the book sounds amazing. Excellent story. I'm going to give you something, Waka, that I had came across. So a few people reviewed your book.
Okay.
Did a lot of online readings. They had one little girl, cute little girl. She was reading your book online and she's very excited about it. So everybody who reads the book, you know, gives a little description, but I found this description very, very interesting. One person described your book as a study abroad experience without actually going through the culture shock. I thought that
interesting
because she said it was an excellent, you know, she really enjoyed it. Excellent read. But I'm like, the way that she described that means that, you know, the way that you described your experience must be like, you know, such where a person feels like they're in the moment and they're there, but they're not actually there. They don't have to go through all the things paying for the plane ticket and all that good stuff. So it's a beautiful, I think, way to describe your story. So speaking of your story, I want you to tell us your story. Tell us, I know this memoir is based upon your life. So for all of us out here, you know, who haven't had a chance to touch the book, which I truly, truly suggest that you do, I want to hear it from you, Waka. I want you to tell us your story. What led up to you being sent to Japan and all to live with your grandmother, and what was that like while you were there?
Okay. Well, my parents came from Japan, and my dad wanted to study psychiatry in the United States. And I would say mental health treatment in Japan, especially back then, wasn't that advanced. And so he came over here for his residency, and he felt like he could learn the most in the U.S. And so he promised my mom that it would only be 3 years. And, you know, she came over, my older brother, my older sister in tow. And then I was the first one in the family who was born here. So I was the first American in my family. And, you know, after his residency, he got a position at a mental health hospital in Topeka, Kansas. And so 3 years became a little longer. And so then he did his fellowship there. And my little brother came along 7 years later. And my mom was pretty intent on preserving our Japanese culture. And I know families sometimes go one way or the other. Sometimes it's assimilate completely, give the kids, American names and don't speak Japanese at the home. But our family was not like that. She gave us all very Japanese names, and she spoke Japanese at home. And as soon as I started school, my parents said that I would stop speaking Japanese and just answer them in English. Like they would speak to me in Japanese as much as possible. And I just started answering them in English. And we would go back during the summers on occasion. So I went back after I was 5, after 3rd grade, after 4th grade, but it wasn't for like that long of a period of time. And then right around when I was 11, my mom said that she asked me to do the laundry in Japanese. And she said that I looked at my sister and asked her to translate.
Uh-oh.
And that freaked my mom out. She was like, no, we cannot have this. Because they always assumed that the comprehension was there, maybe if the speaking wasn't. But then she was really concerned that I was even losing the comprehension part. So she was like, okay, you have to go back, and you have to go back for a really long time. And we're not sending you to the international school like we did that one time, because you're going to speak with all your friends in English there. And so you're going to go to Japanese public school, and it's going to be for 5 months. And we can't go with you because this is happening, and this is happening, and this is happening at home. And you're 12, you'll be fine.
So what was that? I mean, what was running through your head when she spilled all that on you? Like, did you take it seriously at first, or did you just think?
No, I was like, no, this can't be the case. This can't be the case. She's just saying it because I didn't help fold the laundry, That's a pretty harsh punishment. Yeah. No, but the thing is, like, it's kind of like how my dad would say that we were going back in 3 years. I mean, we didn't go back. We didn't go back in 3 years. We grew up here. And so I was like, oh, this is a threat. This is an idle threat. I'll read some books here, and, I'll study a bit more, and I'll try to respond in Japanese a little bit more often. But she didn't drop it. So that's covered in the book too. It's like my realization and my dread that, oh no, she's serious this time. So.
Was it around the time you packed your bags, or when you saw the plane ticket, that you realized this is for real?
Oh, it was when she started buying me new clothes. I was like, okay, this is serious. She's sewing me clothes. She sewed me some clothes too, because she's like, oh yeah, girls your age, they're going to be wearing skirts a lot more than you do. So you're going to need a few skirts. And I was just like, what?
Did you think to yourself, like, Mom, you're going too far. Like, we got to knock this off. Like, okay, I get it. I'm learning a lesson. Wow, that is deep. So you went around, was it like the 80s? You're around 12 years old. Am I correct?
Yes,
okay.
I was 12 years old, and it was 1984.
84.
So, yeah, it was actually the year the Olympics were held in Los Angeles, I believe.
Okay. And so when you went, like, what was the biggest, culture shock for you? Because I know you're used to whatever's going on in Topeka. It's like 1984, you're doing your 1984 thing there. And then here you are in Japan. So I know it's like not the same thing at all. So what is one thing that you went there and it was like, oh my gosh, like this is something that I'm like totally not used to?
Well, at school, it was the fact that I was not the good student. I became the student who really loved PE and home economics. Those were my classes.
Those were your classes.
I knew what was going on then. But all of a sudden, I was at the bottom of the class for practically everything, except for PE, Right. And I didn't understand anything that was going on in social studies because it was Japanese history and not U.S. history and the Pilgrims and, It was, I remember I was studying Japanese history that had occurred probably over 600 years ago. And I remember thinking to myself, the U.S. wasn't even a nation yet. And I was like, this is too long. Like, bring me back to the 200 plus year U.S. history. I can't handle this. So
yeah, you're not in Kansas anymore, I guess you can say. So you had to learn everything that was going on there. So while you were there, like custom wise, like just being in your grandmom's house, I'm pretty sure anybody who's with grandma, it's kind of like a different, I don't care where you at or where you're from.
Right.
The things that grandma did that was different than, what you did with your parents at home. Was there, could you describe that? Was there anything that was different or was it pretty much the same thing?
Well, It's interesting because when I was growing up, I had a good friend whose grandma lived nearby, and she was like the quintessential grandma stereotype. You think of she was handing out like money whenever she saw her, granddaughter, and she would give big hugs, and she was super warm and friendly. And that was not my grandma. My grandma treated me. She didn't treat me like a child. She was pretty strict, and she had expectations for how things went. And it wasn't a very big house, so I shared a room with her. And when she was getting ready for bed and stuff, she would tell me stories. But sometimes they almost felt like monologues, like she was kind of rehashing stuff that went on in the past. It wasn't like, oh, let me sit you down and tell you a story. She'd
Right.
just start talking about something, and then her mind would kind of go to like those past events. So I learned a lot about our family history during that time. But it was my mom prepared me a little bit. And, I'd met my grandma before, and we'd stayed
Right.
with her for a short time. So it wasn't a complete surprise. But she didn't have a washing machine. So I remember, the first night I was there, it's like, okay, well, here's the washboard. This is where you'll wash your clothes every night. And this is where you'll hang it up. And yeah, it was looking back now and having my kids now, I'm thinking my kids would, I don't think they'd go for it.
No, they wouldn't. Well, I mean, a lot has changed between now and like 1984. So if they were in Japan, it would be completely different, embracing a lot of different cultures, So when you're writing this book, and you're sitting down and you're kind of reminiscing over the things that, that you experienced. How was it like to kind of craft it? Were you able to like really pull accurate memories to be able to write this book? Or is there some things that it's just like, I remember it, but I have to add a little bit more onto it because of the story and all, because, we get older, memories fade and change. So what was that like? What was that process like?
So it was a little bit of both. I had a lot of memories that were completely seared into my brain that I have not forgotten. And so I jotted all those notes down. Like the
Right.
time when I did this, my first day of school, I remember that very well. When when I was at my cousin's place, like summer vacation, when I went to Disneyland. So I jotted down all the memories that I knew quite well. And, even back when I was 12 or 13, I always thought that I would write about this experience. So I kept all the letters that were sent to me. And so a lot of those letters addressed a lot of the events that I had written about to them. And so I was able to pull a lot from that. That kind of awakened a lot of memories as well. And then a lot of it was like, okay, well, what did I feel at this time? I'm 12 years old. And so there was a little bit that I had to imagine what I felt like at the time. And dialogue, especially since the bulk of the dialogue was in Japanese, some of it had to be like, I know it wasn't word for word, but I got the gist of the conversation down. So.
Okay. So like when, even in that, like I said, we're all a little bit older now. So yeah. It's hard for me to go back and speak in 12-year-old Carl's voice. Mm-hmm. If you was to ask me to write a memoir, it definitely, I commend you for doing it for, middle grade kids and all, because I don't think I could do that. I couldn't speak in my 12-year-old voice. What was that like for you to find that 12-year-old voice to say, well, how we as 12-year-olds would describe things differently or events differently than we would as adults. So how would you do that now?
So in preparation for writing something for middle grade, I read a ton of middle grade novels, and that really helped me with voice, especially middle grade novels in first person, because mine is in first person as well. And so I really got, I kind of learned through osmosis in that case. also with the letters, it reminded me of how we used to communicate with each other, like between friends. And so that combined with like just reading a lot of middle grade novels really helped in terms of developing voice.
Now, were there any certain books or middle grade novels that kind of really inspired you? Like any middle grade authors, any middle grade titles that actually inspired you while you were writing this book?
Yeah, one title that everyone told me about, and so I read it, and it's a very, very interesting read, is Front Desk by Kelly Yang. And it's actually, I believe it's a trilogy at this point. She just published her third of that series, but it's almost the reverse. It's about a Chinese girl who is in the United States and kind of what her family goes through, like managing a motel. Right. And so I read that. I read Under the Egg, Fish in a Tree, Boy Bites Bug. Yeah.
Boy Bites Bug.
Yeah, Boy Bites Bug was actually written by my mentor, Rebecca Petrick. So I participated in this initiative called Pitch Wars, which matches unagented, unpublished writers with an experienced author who has been published. Right. And so she was great at helping me kind of find my voice and put the memoir together in a way that was accessible for middle grade. And so that was a great part of the process.
Okay, wonderful. All right. Now, how did you know it was time to write this memoir? Like, what was the moment that you said, this is it? This is the moment that I need to get to work on this? Okay, that's interesting because, I had a couple false starts with this. Okay. And I don't know how many years ago, I thought that I would try to write it as fiction. And it came out very false to me. Like, I didn't feel right. It was a chore to write. And I didn't think at the time, well, I'm just going to go all in and just write it like a memoir, because I didn't think anyone would be interested in reading that. And so I left it alone for a while. And actually, in terms of writing, I started out writing screenplays because I love movies. And I remember watching a few movies a long time ago, and I'm like, I have to write. I want to know how to write something like this. And so I took screenwriting classes and, chugged out my first few, and they weren't any good, but then, I got encouragement here and there. And now,
so
Waka, I was going to ask you, because anytime I hear somebody say it wasn't that good, by whose standards, Waka? I posed the same question to Nadine Johnson when she said that. Whose standards are you gauging this on? Your own worst critic, or somebody told you this?
Well, no, I mean, I showed a few friends, and they're like, and they're friends, right? So you can kind of hear the note behind the note, but it's like, that's great. I can't wait until you write your next one. Like, it wasn't like, I have a friend where I'm going to connect you. It wasn't like that.
You might have been dealing with some haters there, Waka. Just want to tell you that. You might have just been like, hey, she's doing too good.
I don't know.
I'm just kidding
objectively, so many people, I feel like there are some screenwriters who write one screenplay and feel like Steven Spielberg's going to produce it. And there are some screenwriters who write wonderfully, but they won't show anyone. So,
where did you fall in? What category?
People alternate in between. Like, sometimes the same writer will feel like this is the work of a genius, and the next morning they'll read it and they'll be like, no, it's not. So, same writer can feel the same way, feel different ways on different days, I guess. Yeah. But so, I'd been writing screenplays with, not much success if you measure success in terms of getting a movie made, which is really, really hard. But I was still like, the guy at the studio has read this. Maybe a couple of my friends have read this. So maybe 5 people will have read my writing, for each screenplay. And I was kind of getting tired of that. And so I was actually talking with someone I knew who's a film exec he used to be with Sony Pictures Animation, but I'm not sure if he is anymore. But he just asked me, well, what else have you been thinking of writing? And I remember at that time, I just kind of pulled this story out of my memory. And I said, oh, yeah, well, this thing happened to me when I was 12. And I don't feel like it's movie material, but I was thinking of writing it as a memoir. And his eyes got really big and he goes, yeah, that's a really interesting story. You should write that story.
He didn't say it like that, did he? Did he just he used that cadence that you just used right there?
Yeah, he's like, you should write that story. He was very excited about it. And so I was like, well, I've been sitting on that story for a really, really long time. And so I thought, well, I'm getting kind of tired of this process of screenwriting right now, and why not? It's not like anything is stopping me. And I thought, well, let's learn something new. And so then I took a memoir writing class. Within about 9 months, I had a first draft, but it was still very memoir-like,
right.
Like back when I was a child, that type
sitting
of
on
voice.
a rock somewhere, just reminiscing about life.
Exactly. And so that's not all that interesting to 12-year-olds now.
Yeah.
So, then I put the hard work in making it accessible for middle grade readers.
Okay, wonderful. So like when you made this for middle grade readers, and like I said, if you have not checked out anything on YouTube about your book, you do have a lot of people that reviewed it. And like I said, we had the one little girl who just seemed like over the moon about the book. Did like a 5-minute review on it.
Okay.
So, what were some of the compliments that you received from the book, about the book, I should say, that really just stood out to you? Like whether it was, this book is just super inspiring to me, or, just what was something that a compliment that you received?
When I was going through the process of trying to find agents who would represent this book, a lot of comments came back with, I'm not sure how relatable this is for a lot of people. Some people, I think, felt it was too niche. Like they felt like only a few people would. Like how many, Japanese American kids from Kansas get sent back to Japan to, I think they were thinking about readership. And so one thing that surprised me when the book first came out is a few people reached out and said, I feel like you have been reading my journal. And so, I was really surprised to hear that. And they were like, when I went to Japan, when I was a teenager, I feel like I could have written some of these pages. And that really surprised me because I guess that's kind of the act of writing is you don't know who it's going to connect with.
Right.
You don't know if it's just for yourself or, but it's such a pleasure when you hear it's for other people and people come back to you and tell you how much it meant and they could relate. And so I think that's been a thrill to hear a lot of people say, yeah, I can relate to that. And I've really enjoyed when people reach out.
Now, what was the thing you wish you'd known before you started this memoir? Like, it was any bumps in the road or anything like that you wish that you knew about, even to the point of getting it published? Like, what did you think would be the hardest thing?
It's easy to say when you look back at things, but like I remember being kind of anxious and nervous and scared like almost every step of the journey. I think a lot of writers can relate to like sending out your query letters to a bunch of agents and waiting to hear if they want to read the full manuscript or if it's a pass, and then you have that little moment of joy when the agents are like, yes, I'd like to read the full manuscript. And then you send it and then you wait to hear whether they like it,
Yeah.
And so I think, I can't control how many people buy this book. I can promote it as much as I can, but I can't control how people react to it or if they like it or not. And I think what I am going to remind myself, like the only thing that I control is the writing,
Right.
and the quality of the writing, and the rest, I can't control that, and I should stop worrying about it.
Yeah, just put the work out. It'll speak for itself.
Yeah. So I guess that is what I would hope to tell myself when I started the process, is like, stop worrying about worry about what you can control.
Right.
But I mean, what use is it really to worry about things you can't control? Because it'll be the same whether you spend hours fretting about it or not. So it's best not to.
Yeah, it's best not to. So like, say in your process, I have a 2-part question. Like, what was, your hardest piece of work to complete? And if you've ever suffered writer's block, how did you overcome it?
Okay, well, I'm going to answer the second part first.
Okay.
Oh, yes, I have had writer's block so many times. And I think all writers have some form of writer's block, whether it's like, day-to-day procrastination or years, basically, where they can't write anything. And I wouldn't say that I've suffered from the second. I wouldn't say that I've suffered from like a really long bout of writer's block.
Right.
So the first part, sorry, I should have answered the first part.
No,
listen,
you went right into it, but it was, I was asking, what was your hardest piece of work to complete between like even your screenplays, your book? Like, what was the hardest thing to really work on?
It always feels like what I'm working on currently is the hardest piece. Yeah. Some things come really easily, and some things are like pulling teeth. I would have to say, I usually don't abandon a work, even if it's not working out. And so, in retrospect, sometimes I look at a piece of work and I'm like, you know what? I shouldn't have spent so much time on that one. It didn't lead anywhere. But I don't know. Sometimes the work is like a baby, or, you don't want to just hang it out to dry. So yeah, I don't know. Like each work has its own difficulties.
Own little bumps in the road, I guess.
Yeah. Each work has some of that. And sometimes life gets busy, and you don't have as much time to devote to it. But
so do you have,
I am the type of. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. You go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I am the type of person that if I'm not writing, I am grouchy. So,
so we ought to keep you with a pen in your hand or something, right?
Yeah, I think for a lot of writers, it's a long spell without writing or creating is going to make them grouchy. So I try to write as much as possible, and whether it leads to something or not, sometimes it doesn't matter. It's just the process.
Well, I guess because you're kind of stifling that part of yourself, you feel, and
right,
hiding that part. So I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on grouchy Waka. What is that like? Because I can't imagine you being grouchy at all. So,
I should bring my sons in.
Yeah, why not? Bring them, yeah.
I think they're hiding right now.
We gotta ask, like, what is that like?
Oh no, they. I don't know. Like when I think about like the past 18 months with the pandemic and all the shutdowns, and I felt really bad for my boys, staying home and not able to see their friends except for outside, and just kind of that anxiety. It's like, do we have COVID? Do they have COVID?
Right.
It was before the vaccination. It was scarier, I think. But one aspect of that time was we weren't busy, and it was kind of in many ways it was a special time because we were all getting enough sleep. We were all hanging out together. We were, so they know that I get grouchy when I feel like there's just too much. There's too many events going on. We have to reschedule and schedule, and, surprises come up. Things weren't put on the family calendar, but, 20 minutes we have a meeting, and it's like, so
Yeah.
that makes me grouchy.
I hear you. But still, I just don't see you like, hulking out and all. How old are your boys?
I have an almost 17-year-old, an almost 14-year-old, and a 12-year-old.
Wow. Okay. So you got your hands full. You got to keep them guys busy. Do you ever think about like, because I know when I take my daughter back to my hometown in Brooklyn, and it's like, just showing her the things that you experienced, been around as kids and things. Do you ever think about doing that, if you have not done it already, with your boys and going back to Japan at all?
Actually, we've taken them back once. My younger brother is married to a woman from Taiwan, and so they had their wedding reception there. But on the way, we stopped in Japan for 10 days. Gosh, that was about 8 years ago now.
Wow.
And so it was really kind of fun to see them experience Japan, like from a little kid's point of view. And, it was really nice is like just everybody was smiling at them on the trains, and they experienced things like the hot drinks from the vending machine. So that's one of the things about Japan is you can get like hot tea from like hot canned tea from a vending machine and hot lemonade. So, I think for a Japanese person right now in Japan, they wouldn't think that hot tea from a vending machine would make such an impression. But for my boys, it was cold. It was February. They just loved getting their hot lemonade from the vending machine. So it was funny. It was fun to see what little things really left an impression on them. And
it's cool to see how many things have changed since 1984, right?
Oh, yeah. So many things have changed. One of my big hurdles in 1984 was navigating the train system, because you'd have to use these train tables, and you'd have to remember which platform to go on if you hopped on the wrong train. What if you didn't know how to get back? So I remember navigating the train system was always a source of worry. But here now, if you have a smartphone, it will tell you, like.
That's a fact. Yeah, that's facts.
It tells you amazing.
Like it always freaked me out that they even give you directions on walking. Like this is where you turn by turn on walking.
You can see yourself on the map. So it's like you will never be lost again unless you run out of, batteries. It's just like, wow. and so I remember that being a huge change. And, especially Tokyo has become so internationalized and so used to foreign visitors and non-Japanese visitors.
Right.
I mean, it was funny because a lot of people just assumed I was Chinese.
Oh, wow.
I visited 3 years ago because they're like, you're not like a typical Japanese woman, but you're Asian, so we're just going to assume you're Chinese.
So, okay, whatever.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, as long as you're not kicking me out of here, we all good.
Yeah, exactly.
I heard Anthony Bourdain one time, he had described, I believe it was Tokyo. He said it was like several little Manhattans within that city. He said no matter how many times he went there, he would always see like a new part of that city, which is wow, So, I mean, did you get to see a lot of those different things growing up? I guess, like I said, it's been a lot of a difference between now and 1984. But to experience all those different areas as much as you could.
Yeah, I worked in Japan for a couple years in my 20s, and I wasn't in Tokyo at that time. I was in a prefecture called Gunma, which is basically the belly button of Japan. It's central Japan. And, that was a different experience too. But with Tokyo, where my grandmother's place was, it's not like center, it's not central like Shinjuku, but a little bit more on the outskirts, where you have residences.
Right.
And I visited there 3 years ago, and it was almost unrecognizable, so like that's one part of Tokyo. And then there's that really super bustling part of Tokyo that you always kind of see, featured in movies,
right.
With the I forget what the crossing is called, but it's like one of the biggest crosswalks in the world where everybody crosses at once, and that's another part of Tokyo. So yeah, it is a lot of different places in one area. But I remember when I visited New York, I remember thinking, oh, this feels like Tokyo.
Yeah.
Like it felt more like Tokyo than it did like Oregon, for example.
Right. Yeah, because that's my hometown, and it's, I'm used to hustle and bustle and things. So when I moved, and it's kind of like a slower pace down here, it's like, wow, it's driving me crazy. I got to be honest with you, Waka. Like we talk about the train systems and things, like I have done so much reading on the train, and just thinking and people watching, but mostly reading, and it's just like you miss all of that. I hate driving everywhere I need to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I especially when I worked in Japan, I loved riding the trains, and I did a ton of reading during that time. And the great thing about the Japanese train system is it's almost always on time.
Yeah.
It is very, very punctual.
We need to adapt some of that, right?
I mean, there are a lot of aspects about Japan that I really wish could be incorporated in the U.S.
So what is the thing that you miss the most since you've been away?
There are a couple things. I would definitely say the food.
I knew you was going to say that for some reason. I knew you was going to say it.
Oh, man, the food. Just like, your casual, like, hole-in-the-wall restaurant would have the most amazing food for like $6 or $7, basically the equivalent of. And, it's hard to find here. It was really hard to find in Kansas.
I can imagine
there are
so.
some,
Kansas,
in New York, you'd probably be able to find a lot of really good stuff.
Without a doubt.
But Oregon, you can find it, but you might have to drive like 20 minutes for it. So
yeah, that's money well spent.
Yeah, it's not as easy to come by. But gosh, another thing that I miss is the hot springs.
Oh, wow, you got to describe that. Yeah.
Okay, so Japanese hot springs, there's just a lot of natural hot springs, and so it's like an outdoor pool of hot mineral water that it's beautiful. You just go and you can sit and soak in it. And I heard that if you go up north, like some of the Japanese monkeys will sit in the hot springs like on an especially cold day. I've never seen any of the Japanese macaques, I guess, out in the wild. Yeah, they're called Japanese macaques, but they're out in the wild, I think, more in the northern parts. But
it was like not too long ago, a report came out of India, I believe it was. It said the monkeys were like literally attacking people. It was becoming like a problem. Yeah, they were like really aggressive out there.
Yeah, I haven't heard the monkey. I mean, I think sometimes they cause trouble, but I don't think they're at that stage yet. But yeah, I guess since I've never seen one in the wild, that's why I'm somewhat enamored of the idea. I'm sure people who encounter them all the time aren't as pleased to see them.
Out of all the like critters you see running around, a monkey is like just, out here in the sticks, it's like, if I see a raccoon or something, I'm freaking out because I'm a city guy. Raccoons and possums aren't my friends. So if I can see a monkey just pop out the garbage can, I won't lie to you, Waka, I'd probably run. I'm being for real. You never know.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, you never know with these things. So, I wanted to circle back to your whole screenwriting process. Now, you co-directed a movie, a little short film. You want to tell us about that?
Okay. So, I was feeling a little bit discouraged about the prospects of getting a feature made.
Right.
And so one of my writing friends said, well, why don't you write a short? A short is a lot easier to get made. We're not talking about anything more than 10 pages, and try to have limited location, limited number of actors, and kind of see where that'll take you. And so I wrote kind of a short rom-com-ish, screenplay, and I entered it into a contest, actually a couple contests. And it did well in DC, of all places.
Wow.
And so the DC Asia Pacific American Film Organization, it won that contest. So the prize was to get it produced. And so they helped with casting. They helped find the actors. They helped with photography.
Did you have a hand in any of that process? The location, any process that you just described, did you have a hand in that at all?
Well, so I'm 3,000 miles away.
Oh.
So I was very happy when they were like, so we have an idea for a location. Because it was an office. It was just an office.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, great. I was very happy to receive any help that they offered. The casting was really fun because we did that all over, Zoom.
Yeah.
Zoom, or I don't know if many people were using Zoom then, or Skype.
Skype was probably the thing before the pandemic.
Yeah. And so I would watch actors audition, online. And that was really eye-opening too, because I'm like, wow, that's not the intention I had when I wrote that line. But everybody comes with their own interpretation that's kind of informed by their own background and their own experiences. So that was really interesting for me. But and then part of the process too is to help like beginning directors direct. And so they knew I was inexperienced with this. A co-director came on board. And so, these short films and budgets, the way they are, we basically prepared as much as possible. And then I flew out for 2 days and we had a day that I believe started at around 6 a.m. And ended at about 8 p.m. and we shot the whole thing. And then, it was in post for a while. And, someone else handled the editing. He would occasionally ask for feedback on certain edits he'd made. But even with a 10-minute short film, it was a collaborative process between more than a dozen people.
Wow.
And so, even though I was a co-director and I wrote it, it certainly wouldn't ever have, been completed without the generous help of a lot of other people. So, it was a really great experience, but it was also, it was eye-opening as to how much work it takes.
That's why they have at the end of every movie, those credits seem like they're about 20 minutes long.
Exactly.
There's a lot that goes into this stuff,
Yeah. So I have ultimate respect for any movie that gets made and completed because even just that 10-minute short, one location, 4 actors, that took months. It took months of hard work and the work of a lot of other people. So
you ever see some of the worst movies, late night sci-fi channel, Sharknado type stuff? And
I was exactly thinking of Sharknado. I remember saying I have the ultimate respect for Sharknado now because it got made.
Yeah.
And everybody knows Sharknado. I haven't seen it. I heard it's actually
it's terrible. It's like one of those things when you're home. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna tell you my Sharknado story. Never watched the whole movie in its entirety, Waka, at all. But it's one of those things where you're flipping through the channels and you're like, what the heck is this? It's like a guy, he had a chainsaw hand or something. I don't know which Sharknado, because I think it's 50 million of them at this point. But I'm seeing the shark and he's in a tornado. I'm like, this is the worst thing ever. Somebody actually took a person seriously when they said, look, we're going to come here and pitch this story to you. We're going to have sharks and a tornado. What's the name of it? Sharknado. Like, you're thinking to yourself, like, who thought this was a good idea?
But, now after making that 10-minute short film, I remember thinking, and I hadn't seen Sharknado, but I'd heard stories.
Yeah, you did yourself a favor.
But I remember thinking,
don't.
But I remember thinking, my goodness, even the special effects of getting sharks in a tornado, that must have taken hours and thousands of dollars. I don't know if it took millions of dollars.
It sure didn't look like it. I'll be honest with you. It did not look like it.
But I remember thinking, kudos, hats off to them, because I'm sure it was really hard.
You being generous, But I respect the fact this was somebody's baby. Somebody sat down and wrote this script. I don't know what they was on when they wrote it, but they wrote it. I'll be honest with you. But it was horrible.
And the thing too is I hear so many screenwriters talk about how, the ones who've been lucky enough to get a movie made, they talk about how it's changed so much from what they've written originally.
Yeah.
And so, to be honest, that's kind of scary. Like, if you have a story that you put your heart and soul into and you sell it, and they take it in a different direction and you don't like it, I mean, that's a bitter pill to swallow, I think.
Yeah. I guess that's why so many people go independent, I guess, if you don't have a studio backing. But if you've ever noticed, like YouTube now, a lot of people are just filming movies and just putting them on YouTube. I mean, no financial backing or whatever. Just get your friends together. And those are the ones that end up being successful. Mm-hmm. So I say all that to say this. While I was away, don't give up on that. I know you wouldn't want nobody to twist your story up, but yeah, don't give up on that. Some of the stuff you see out there, this would be like Oscar award winning material compared to Sharknado. Somebody made Sharknado. Whenever you write in Waka, always think about that. Somebody made Sharknado. Somebody signed off on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll keep that as my mantra.
Keep it as your mantra. Somebody signed off on Sharknado. So yeah. And so you wrote comedies and rom-coms and things like that. What was like one of your favorite rom-coms?
Oh gosh, one of my favorites. It was called Afterbirth.
Never heard of it.
Oh yeah.
Please explain.
For me,
you.
that was the one that I wrote. That was the favorite one I wrote.
Yeah, because I never got to the title of it. But now we're going to circle back. I'm sorry, we're going to put that other question on pause, because now you got to tell me about Afterbirth, because you told us you made the short, but you didn't, tell us.
Yeah, this is just a feature that I'd written, and it had, placed all right in contests, and some people found it amusing, some people found it juvenile and gross, but I guess that's what happens. But it was, after I had had 3 kids and gone through the birthing process 3 times. So it was just this comedy of a group of friends and how their lives changed the first year after having children. So I felt like no movie had done it justice. So that's why I felt like I needed to write it. But in terms of my favorite rom-com otherwise, gosh, I would say like the classic When Harry Met Sally was when I started really, really enjoying them. But Richard Curtis, he writes a lot of really funny ones and heart-touching ones. So yeah, 4 Weddings and a Funeral was one of my favorites too. So all right, so those are ones that kind of inspired you when you was writing and stuff. Yeah, I would say so. I liked Shakespeare in Love as well. I thought that was clever and funny, and I like the ones that had a little bit more intellectual meat to them. So I think that's why I like Shakespeare. It wasn't like the 40-year-old virgin or something like that. Although that's really funny. It is a classic. It is a classic. I do think that's really funny, and I thought Knocked Up was pretty funny. Those guys had a lock for a couple of years. Yeah, with those type of movies, they had a good stronghold on it for a while.
and now they all got older. So it's like, it's not funny anymore.
Yeah. I saw the first Hangover and I thought that was funny, but I didn't see the second or third. But from what I heard, they're not as funny.
Nah, they topped out like after the first one. That's just my opinion. They topped out after the first one. I think the first one had Mike Tyson with the tiger and he punched the guy in the face, or was that the second one?
Was that the first one?
I don't remember. They all started kind of like running in, but I do remember that, and I thought that was hilarious. Just
I think that was the first one.
Yeah. But never go wrong with a good Mike Tyson story. Wow. All right. So let me ask you another question. What resources do you recommend for like aspiring writers, whether it be for screenwriting or memoirs, novels? What resources do you recommend to help them in their journey?
Well, one of the people I think who knows the most about movies is this fellow by the name of Scott Myers. And he is a screenwriter himself. He wrote Canine, and he has a blog called Go Into the Story. And I believe it's on Twitter too. He's really active, and I believe his handle is just Go Into the Story. But he has so many resources on his blog, and a lot of professional screenwriters still are like, if you want to learn about screenwriting, look at Scott Myers' site. And I believe he has a book coming out as well.
Wow.
So
was Canine the only movie that he made?
No, he made some others. I don't want to give you the wrong title. I think Alaska, but he just knows so much about film, so much about writing. And I would definitely say for screenwriters, like if you follow him, you'll just get a ton of tips. And, his advice is watch movies, read scripts, and write pages. And
that's it.
Wow. And you will get better. And he goes through some exercises in which you analyze scenes and see how they work, why they work. And so he's a great resource, I think.
Okay.
In terms of other resources, I tell every person who's thinking about writing, and if they're not on Twitter, they need to be on Twitter.
Right.
Because all the writers kind of congregate there, and you can find so many, notices about like, hey, there's this free mentorship program coming up. If you're a diverse writer and you're not published or you need an agent, apply to this mentorship, and there's going to be an author who will help you with your manuscript. And I've found just so many generous people out there who are willing to do that, and some really great programs starting up. So any writer who's not on Twitter needs to be on Twitter. And for like writing memoirs, I took a class through Literary Arts in Portland. I think classes are a great place to start if you don't have any idea of where to start. And I guess another great thing too, with the pandemic and the abundance of Zoom now, is that if you want to take from a teacher and you're not in the area, a lot of times they're offering online classes. So I would say definitely do that. And the program that I benefited from the most was probably Pitch Wars. And Pitch Wars, and they have mentors for all sorts of levels and genres. It is hard to get in, but even for people who submit and they aren't picked, for example, they'll point you towards resources. You'll find other writers who are kind of in the same boat. You'll find critique partners. So I think that's a really great community as well.
Now, does Pitch Wars help you find your publisher and all that? Is it like a full package deal where they get you the agent, the publisher, or how does that work?
So the purpose of it is to just basically improve your craft. And so I know that a lot of publishers know about it. A lot of agents know about it. And a lot of writers emerging from it, like myself, have found a great deal of success just as a result from being part of it. But you don't necessarily find a publisher. You don't necessarily find an agent. But the culmination of each session is something called the Agent Showcase.
Right.
And some agents sign up, and basically everyone who's been working hard on their manuscripts they put them up for like agents to view and like and request full manuscripts and things like that. And so that's how I found my agent. I was lucky to find an agent through that. Not everyone is going to find an agent through that, and not everyone is going to be published. But I think people who go through the program, they improve their craft.
Right. And
I think, my mentor helped me tons because I was coming from screenwriting, and I was relatively new to the middle grade writing process. And so she wasn't, and she was experienced. And so she really helped me, and it was a steep learning curve, but I would say it was accelerated quite a bit just by having someone who's willing to help me.
Oh, that's good. That's good to know, because I know we have a lot of authors or aspiring authors who listen to the show, and I'm pretty sure that's some useful information they can take in.
Yeah, and there's something called Author Mentor Match.
Okay.
As well, and you'll hear that announced on Twitter. I think We Need Diverse Books has a mentorship thing open as well, and I'm sure I'm missing other mentorship programs, but there are a bunch out there.
Yeah, they exist, so they're
yeah.
It's easier for you to kind of grab something out. But it's good that you gave those resources by name, so that way it give everybody a good starting point on where to go. I admire any writers and all. I'm not a writer myself. Only thing I write is show notes and questions. So, in my name. So, I admire that, you guys plug with your craft like that you do. I had another question for you too. So, I hear that you are a baker. What is your favorite thing to bake?
It depends on what I feel like, but I like making pies, cakes, cookies, definitely more the sweet side.
Yeah.
I tried some bread, and you can't go wrong with a good loaf of bread, but I definitely have a sweet tooth, so my baking tends to lean towards that side.
Do you bake more or less, like, when your whole process of writing, like, does it help you to think when you do it? Like, are you coming out the kitchen with like 4 pies, Waka, because you're trying to figure out what to write next or something?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes I use the baking as a reward. Like, I finished something, so I'm going to make a whole batch of cookies. And, sometimes I do use it to procrastinate. Like, I'm so frustrated. I'm just going to bake a whole batch of cookies.
A distraction.
Yeah, exactly.
From your thoughts for a second.
Fuel. Yeah. It's more like fuel.
See, I tend to lean to the coffee side for the fuel. So
coffee is always better with a little pastry.
At least you got both down pat, right?
Yes.
So that's cool. And I also hear that you strum a mean guitar. Is that the truth?
No, it is not the truth.
I'm trying to make you, help me out, Waka. I'm trying to sell this.
No,
thing.
Yeah. I started playing guitar because my youngest son was playing ukulele, and he was only 5. He had just turned 5 when he started learning, so he couldn't read yet. And so I would sit in during his lessons and take notes so I could help him practice. And I just found that so fun. Like, music was something I did in middle school and high school, as part of a band. And I didn't pursue it at all during college, and I didn't realize how much I missed it until like my son started playing. And so eventually I picked up guitar and learned learned a little, but no, it's
You strike
not.
me as an acoustic person.
Yes, it's acoustic. Yeah, but I did have an electric. Well, my son had an electric guitar for a while, but no, I kept my acoustic.
You kept your acoustic. Well, that's good. I guess strumming the guitar. I had a guitar once. My uncle.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he had ordered one from Amazon, and some reason they gave him two. So he gave me one. And I kid you not, Waka, I don't know how to play a guitar worth a dime. But what happens is that I'm just one day in my house, I'm just sitting on my couch, and I'm just sitting there strumming, just thinking about life. And I'm like, this sounds terrible. But it's relaxing, and it looks cool when you got it on the stand and everything. When people come by, like, oh, you play guitar? Yeah, I'll play it. I don't play it well. But I guess that's something I will return to, I think, when the writing isn't breathing down my neck. Yeah, it might help you think.
Yeah. I admire musicians and what they're able to do, and any artist, anyone who endeavors to do something creative, hats off. Yeah, we got to keep nurturing this creativity, right? Yeah. In any form it comes in. So now, Waka, before we get ready to wrap up, I really hate to let you go because we're having such a good conversation, but I know everybody got to get some sleep. A question I always ask, and, we've discussed this before, like, what would you, Waka, today say to you, 12-year-old Waka, going through your experiences? What would you tell 12-year-old Waka if you could? I would say everything works out eventually, and whether you worry about it or not isn't going to change the outcome. So stop worrying and being so anxious about it. And, I would also tell 12-year-old Waka, maybe start the middle grade book writing process a little earlier. Wouldn't we all tell ourselves these things? Like, whatever it is you want to do, start it early. I tell the kids this stuff all the time. Yeah, start it earlier. Start the guitar playing earlier. You would have learned a little bit more quickly. Yeah. Probably something like that. You're going to love bacon when you get older, too. 12-year-old Waka. And coffee. You'll love coffee. Yes. The coffee, I think I had a taste for coffee at a pretty early age, actually. Did you now? Wow. Well, my dad gave me Sanka, and I remember tasting it and thinking, this is really good. It had the cream and the sugar in it. But, I remember tasting Sanka, which I know real coffee lovers think that's not coffee, but for a kid it was. Yeah, you might be right there. But I'll let you get that one because, I don't want to yuck on your yum. If you like Sanka, you like Sanka, So that's good. But I'm getting ready to wrap up. So, Waka, where can we find you? I have a website. It is wakatbrown.com. wakatbrown.com. Excellent. Please, I encourage you all to go to wakatbrown.com. Also, please pick up her book While I Was Away, which is available on Amazon in digital, right? Digital and hard copy? Yes. That's correct. Okay. All right. And the Only One Mic podcast is available on all major platforms that you stream your podcast on. Please don't forget to rate the show and subscribe. Also, if you'd like to get in contact with the Only One Mic podcast, you can reach us via Instagram and Twitter at the Only One Mic P1, Facebook and LinkedIn at the Only One Mic podcast, and via email at the Only One Mic 00@gmail.com. Once again, Waka, thank you, Waka Brown. Thanks for having me, Carl. No, anytime. You're more than welcome to come back anytime. And as always, I tell you to speak your truth quietly and clearly and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant, because they too have their story to tell. But we also tell you, please nurture your talents. Be creative, folks. All right. Thanks again, Waka. And this is the Only One Mic podcast. Signing off. Peace.